Okay, here we are. So who are we? Well, that's me there on the left. My name is Taylor Chu, and then on the right here, we've got Tom Fowles, and we are the co-founders of Learn to SQL. So Learn to SQL, just a company that goes ahead and teaches people about SQL, no matter what their level is, whether it's beginning or more advanced. And both of us actually live here in Utah. And we work as database engineers at a company called Brevium. That company, our company here, just goes ahead and we work with medical practices to find out information about various patients so that we can go ahead and help the practices get people to come back in to get appointments so the practice can make more money. So that's a little bit about our background. We actually both went to the same college, graduated with the same degree too, which is in information systems, and been working at our current company for a couple of years now. So that's a little bit about us here. And I want to go ahead and ask now what y'all's background is as far as why you want to learn SQL. So go ahead there, left hand bar, go ahead and type in why it is that you want to learn SQL, whether it's for work, to move up at your company, whatever it may be. So go ahead, type it out there on the left-hand side. Okay, well, we'll see if any of you guys answer here. Hopefully so soon. But feel free to go ahead and just type it in there as we go along. Okay, here we go. Tariq answered. Self-teaching web design. Okay, very cool. Yeah, this is definitely something that can help with that. You're going to have to work with databases as you move along. As you're making these websites, especially if it's going to be interactive in any way, just collecting information from possible clients and whatnot. So SQL will definitely be helpful there. Okay, Matt Brinkerhoff. All right. Friend recommended it. All right. I'm actually a friend of Matt Brinkerhoff, so that works out perfectly. We were in the Marine Corps together. Okay, great. As far as how SQL can be helpful, I just want to show you a little bit here. So let's go ahead and I'll share my desktop again. You can take a look here. So should show up in just a second. But yeah, there are tons of job opportunities in SQL. In fact, let's just go ahead and see what we can find if we just Google it. So SQL job average salary. Let's see what we can find. Okay, here we go. So we scroll down. Google tells us, yeah, you can be a software engineer, developer. Obviously, SQL skills will be helpful that way. Average salary, $93,000, so not too shabby that way. Let's just come here to pay scale and see. Yeah, you can be software engineer, 76,000. Data analyst, about 60,000. Business analyst, more on the IT side, net you about 67,000, and so on and so forth. So there's definitely some good options as far as career choices that way. And so we just want to open that door for everyone so that they can have those opportunities. So let's go ahead now and let's dig into the content of the webinar. What we're going to do here is we're going to come over to this website, learntosql.com, and this is where we'll be working. So if you can go ahead and pop over to there, that's learntosql.com, and that's where we'll be working from. So once you're there, go ahead and on the right-hand side, there's this playpen option in the menu, and click on that. And we'll come here. And if at any point throughout this you have any questions, go ahead, pop it there in the side bar there for the chat, and Tom's here monitoring that so he can help answer any questions or let me know if there's anything we can help address that way. Okay, so this here is our playpen. It's essentially the sandbox where we're going to write our queries. We're going to introduce a few basic queries today, and we're going to go over what you might actually find yourself in if you're working in a company and you need to work through the database. So in this case here, you can follow along by actually going to this yourself, or you can just watch, but we're going to be working with this retailer database, okay? And in order to see what's more in it, we're going to click on this button here, which is Show Schema. And the schema here is essentially the map to our database. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit. And the database itself is just something that holds a lot of information. And so this map, or the schema here, tells us what's inside of that database. So here we've got information about customers, we've got orders, we've got order details, we've got products, product lines, employees, etc., etc. And so these are all different categories, I guess you could say, inside of the database, categories of information. And if we look here at this customers table, as it's called here, this table has information about customers like customer number, customer name, the last name, the first name, the phone number, etc., etc. And these are all different attributes of a given customer that you might have. Or if we come over here to look at this orders table, you'll see that you've got your order number or your order date, a required date, ship date, etc., etc. So we've got these different things here. And in fact, I want you to pay special attention to this customers table and this orders table, because that's mainly where we're going to be working for the rest of this webinar here today. So does anybody have any questions right now about databases or the schema or about tables? One thing I did forget to mention is that these attributes here are also known as columns when we're talking in SQL. So I'll be referring to them as columns here moving forward. Okay, so if you have any questions, go ahead and pop that in the chat. But moving forward, one other thing I want to point out here with the schema is you see this column or this attribute right here, which is called customer number. That's in the customers table. And if we look over here at the orders table, we've got order number and other information about the order, but you also have a customer number here. And actually that is the link, or as you see here, this dotted line, that's a link between these two tables, the customers table and the orders table. Now the reason why you need that, well, there's a couple reasons that you might need that. Here with the orders, I mean, it really doesn't mean much unless we can tie it to a customer. And so the way we tie an order to a customer is through this customer number. And then when we have that, we can say, okay, if customer 2 made an order, then we can come over here in the customers table and find whichever customer has customer number of 2. And we see, okay, customer number 2 is a real person. It's John Smith. They live at this location. And this employee helped them, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we can know it that way. And also we can look at the customers and we can say, okay, here's John Smith. And we see that using customer number, we can see that John Smith has made however many orders. We see if they're a good customer or a bad customer, either one. So that's going to come in handy now. Let's come back here to the playpen. And for the rest of today, what we're going to be looking for is to find which of our customers are, quote unquote, are bad customers, the ones that either maybe we don't want to support as much moving forward, or maybe they're the customers that we want to put our marketing efforts towards. And so we want to find out how we can see that information. And so what we're going to do first is just a basic query to see what's in our customers table and to see what's in our orders table. So I'm going to type it out, then I'll explain what exactly it is that we're looking at here. So we'll do select star, which is Shift 8 on your keyboard, if you're wondering where that is. And then from, let's do customers. Okay. So I'll explain this sort of backwards here. The reason for that is because when SQL is figuring out which information to pull, it actually works not from top to bottom necessarily, but it actually starts with this here, this from clause. So this from clause says, okay, we're going to see what table we're going to pull information from. In this case, we're going to pull information from the customers table. And then from that customers table, we're going to do the select clause. And the select clause is saying, okay, we grab this data here from the customers table. We're going to grab specific portions of that customers table. Or if we come back to the schema here, there'll be that we'll pull, maybe we'll pull the customer number, or maybe we'll pull the customer name, et cetera, et cetera. And in this case, we're using a star here. And the whole point of the star is to say, we're going to grab all of the columns, all of the information. Okay, so we're going to run the query here, and we'll see what information we pull from that. Okay, great. So if we scroll on down, we'll see that we grabbed everything that's in the customers table. We have a customer number, we got customer name, last name, phone number, etc., etc. All the type of stuff that you expect in the table containing information about customers. Okay, so let's go ahead and change this now, and let's grab information from the orders table. We'll run that query and see what we get. Okay, and there we go. So if we scroll on down, we see that we have the order number, the order date, required date, ship date, etc., etc. And then over here on the right, as we mentioned earlier when we were looking at the schema, we've got the customer number as well. So this customer number could tie to the customer number of a particular customer in the customers table. So we've got both of those things here now, and now we're going to dive a little bit deeper to find the information that we want. And specifically, we want now to see how many orders each given customer has made. So I'll go ahead and ask you guys if you know, because we're going to use an aggregate function to figure out how many orders each customer has made. And it's sort of like Excel a little bit, so if you're familiar with that, then you probably can guess what we're looking for here. But I want to ask you what aggregate function we might use to go ahead and find out how many orders have been made. So go ahead, if you know the answer or if you want to take a guess, go ahead and guess there in the comment section. We'll wait a few seconds, see if anybody answers. Not, then move on forward. Okay, not seeing anything yet, so we'll just go ahead and introduce it. But it's actually this aggregate function called count. Okay, you would actually have parentheses opening and closing after that. So the count will tell us how many orders are made. So we'll just say here select count, and coming back to the schema diagram, let's just go with order number here. So we'll type in order number. So we're going to find the count of orders from the orders table. Okay, so let's run that query and let's see what we get there. And we see that we get 326. All right, so that's definitely along the route of what we're looking for. This is actually the total number of orders that have been made in the database altogether. And so now we want to go a step beyond that. We want to find the number of orders per customer. Okay, so coming back to the schema, let's take a look. And let's use this customer number column here to specify our customers. So we do customer number, and then a comma, and then the count there. And the commas are the ways that you can separate the different columns that you're going to be selecting information with. Okay, so now this is not all that we need actually, and we need to introduce another element of our query here, which is called the group by. So I'll type it out, and then I'll tell you what exactly that means here. So the group by, the whole point of that is we're grabbing all the information from orders, and then when we do this group by, we're separating out that information into the different customers, or the different customer numbers in this case. So customer 1 will go off in this corner and all his information. Customer 2 and all her information go off in another corner. We'll have these different groups, and then with that, we'll go ahead and select out that customer number and then the number of orders for each given customer. All right, so let's go ahead and run this query, see what we get. All right, so there is our information. So you've got our customers here, and then we've got the number of orders that they've made over here in the right-hand column. So that is that, and how we use the group by to go ahead and see it for each individual customer. Now the next step here is we'll see that it's in a pretty random order. We've got 3 orders here, 3, 5, but then it goes back down to 4 and up to 17. So the way that we can go ahead and make those in a helpful order is through another clause here, which you write after a group by, and it's called order by, and then we'll go ahead and type in count of order number. Okay, just like we had there in the select clause. So when you run that query, We see we've got this count in a specific order here. In fact, it would be helpful if we had it in the opposite order from we had in the opposite order so we could see who made the most orders. So the way that we can do that is we just type DESC here at the end here. And that stands for descending. So we'll start with the highest count and then we'll work our way back down. All right, so there we go. And we see that customer 141 had 26 orders. And then 124 had 17 on all the way down the list here. So we can see obviously the ones at the top are better or perhaps are most profitable customers, and then these ones at the bottom less so. Now there's one problem that we're running into here, one thing we're not really accounting for, which is that we're not seeing any of the customers that didn't make any orders. Okay, and the reason for that is because if we have customers that didn't make any orders, those customers and the customer numbers are not going to be in the orders table. And so since we're only pulling from the orders table, we're not going to be able to see those customers at all. So we're going to need to be able to account for that. And the way that we're going to do that is through something called a subquery. So I'll introduce that here. One helpful way moving into this to think about it is that we know two sets of information, essentially, in regards to our customers. We know the set of all of our customers. And we did that before when we did our select everything from our customers table. So we know that set, and we also know the set of customers who have made an order. In fact, it's all these customers that we have listed here. And so what we can do is we can subtract the customers that have made an order from the set of all the customers, and simply enough, that should give us the set of customers who haven't made an order. Okay, and so that's how we're going to use the subquery here. So we'll type out the subquery first. I'll type it out and then I'll explain what's going on. So we'll select customer number from orders. Okay, and that'll give us a set of all the customers that have made an order. And then what we'll do is we'll put that query here in parentheses, and that'll be our subquery. Then I'll type out the rest, and then I'll explain what is going on. So select star from customers where customer number not in. Okay, and then I'll enter this down just so it's a little clearer to see what's going on. Okay, so we have this subquery here, sort of like a query inside of a query, inception style. And this gives us all the customers who have made an order. And then outside of that, we've got all the customers. And specifically, all the customers who are not in the set of customers who have made an order. So essentially, all the customers minus the customers who have made an order. So when we do that, and we run this query, and then when we get a result here, and these are all the customers who have not made an order. So like we were searching for there, all right? So that gets us that far. But once again, we need this information, plus we need all the order information and all the information for the customers who did make orders. So let's go ahead and find out how we can find out something useful here, which is to see all the orders, but also to see the different customer names, since the customer numbers, at least as far as looking at it, really isn't that pleasing to the eye or really that helpful here. So what we're going to do is something called a join. So I'll remove this query here, and I'm just going to type out what we're going to do here and then explain it. We'll select star from customers. Actually, let's enter this down to the next line so it's a little clearer. So select star from customers, and then we're going to do what's called a join. And I'll type this out in capitals so it's a little easier to see what's going on. Join orders. So we're joining the orders table, and then we're going to do this thing here on customers dot customer number equals orders dot customer number. Okay, and so let's explain this now. We're going to try to grab information from the customers table and the orders table, and so we'll be displaying that all at once. And the reason we have this part here, this on portion of the clause, is so that we can match it up properly. So let's come back over to the schema so I can explain that a little bit more. This goes back to what we talked about originally about there being a customer number in both tables. Because you think about it, if you have an order, or let's say you have a customer, and this customer, let's use our example from earlier, John Smith, and then we have his customer information in a row, and then we have an order and all that information in the same row. But what if that order wasn't made by John Smith? Then that would obviously be pretty confusing, and then so on and so forth through our other customers and our other orders. So it only really makes sense if the order information on the same row as the information with John Smith is an order made by John Smith. So the way that we do that here is we say we're joining these two tables where the customer number from the customer table equals the customer number from the orders table. Okay, so we'll run this query, and we should get a combination of the two different tables together. Okay, great. So here we are, and we see here on the left we've got all of the customer table information, the number, the name, the address, etc. If we scroll on over, and remember here, this first row is customer number 103 for Green Schmidt, or at least that's a contact number. If we come on over, then we start to see our order table information here, the order number, the day, shipped status, and then, like I mentioned earlier, the customer number, which is also 103, which means that this order that we've been looking at here on the top row was indeed made by this company. All right, and so on and so forth. We see that this company made another order here and another order here. So we've got all of that information to work with. Now, the next thing we want to go ahead and do is we want to get back to that point where we're showing the customer name and then also the number of orders that they've made. So go ahead, get rid of this query here, and we'll type out the next query. So we want the customer name this time, comma, so we can get another column or another bit of information, and we'll get the count from order number. All right, and then we're going to grab that from the customers table, and we're going to join in the orders table on the same thing that we did before, which was customers.customer number equals orders.order for customer number. And then we're going to add in that group by like we had originally. So it'd be group by customer name. And then let's go ahead and throw in that order by too, so that we can get it in the right direction that we wanted. So order by count of order number. Okay, and one last thing I didn't really explain before is this part here. This is referred to as the alias. So essentially, this is customer number and this is customer number, but they come from different locations. So we need to specify more specifically which customer number we're talking about. In this case, this is the customer table's customer number, and this one is the order table. So the way you do it is you write out the alias, and then you write a period or a dot, and then the actual column name that you're talking about. Okay, so let's run this query, and we'll see what we get. Okay, awesome. So we are getting here the order of all the different customers and the number of orders that they made. Now, if we look through this here, you'll see that we run into a similar problem that we had originally in this webinar, which is that we're not seeing any of the customers that didn't make any orders. And so we obviously want to include that in our count here. And so the way that we can do that is through this concept called a left join, or there's also another thing called a right join as well. Okay, we're just going to go over the left join here. Right join is pretty much the same thing though, because if you remember, right now we're getting information from the customers table that matches with information from the orders table on the customer number. And so what we can do in order to get information that's in the customers table but that's not in the orders table, aka our customers who haven't made any orders, what we do is write out this thing called a left join. Okay, so once again, this will grab information from the customers table and the orders table that matches, and it'll also grab information from the customers table that is not in the orders table. So we'll run this query here, and we should get what we're looking for. All right, so now we're seeing all of these customers who, for whatever reason, haven't made any orders at all. In fact, there's quite a number of them here. And then after that, we see the ones who have made some orders, but not very many, and it increases from there. So this got us to the point that we were looking at for today, which is to see which of our customers haven't made any orders or made very few orders. And obviously, if you're in a business setting, you can do whatever it is that you needed to do with that information, whether as you market to them more or you provide more or less support to them so that they can become better customers. All right, so that's the main material that we wanted to cover today. We went pretty fast and covered a lot of concepts. Go ahead and put any questions that you have here in the chat bar so that we can take a look at that as well. And Tom will help out in answering those. So just wait a second, see if you have any questions, and then we'll go ahead and do a little recap here before we finish up for today. Okay, so no questions so far. Go ahead and type those in still, though, if you have them, and we'll take a look at them. But yeah, I just want to recap what we went over. We went over this business process of finding out good and bad customers based off their orders. We went over the select clause, went over the from clause, went over this group by and the order by. We also went over aggregate functions, in this case, this count function. And we went over joins as well, just normal joins where you can grab data that matches from multiple tables. And also these ones like a left join where you can grab the matching data and also information that's in one table but not the other. All right, so we covered all of that here today. And from that, we're able to find a useful report that might help in your company. So hopefully that was helpful here today. Last thing I want to go over is just where do you go from here? There's a lot of good resources out there. In fact, point you to a couple here. There's this Playpen where you can continue to work with other tables that are here in the database and in our other databases that we have here. There's also a couple of courses that I invite you to check out. This one here is a great one, this 10 queries course. Actually offer it for free, and it'll take you through 10 different queries that you can practice run by yourself just to reinforce the principles that we've talked through here today. Let me show you another course that we have as well. This other course here, this hands-on SQL course, also free, and it introduces a lot of the concepts that we went over today in actual written form, so you can learn more about selecting and from and whatnot. And it goes through some practice queries so that you can get your hands dirty and learn a bit more that way. So those are both options available to you. And there's a lot of other content out there online that you can search. But what I found really made the difference for me when I was learning SQL was having live training, having hands-on training that way. Because, yeah, I went through a lot of different courses and I test out different queries, but then you get to a point where you just get stuck. And you can look around and Google a little bit, but there's not many sources that'll tell you the answer and how to get there and whatnot, answer all your little questions. And so you just sort of get stuck and you don't really learn that much. And I found the thing that made the biggest difference for me was when I started working at my current company, and we would do things like pair programming, which essentially is just that you have somebody else there who knows what they're doing, and they're guiding you through the steps of making your different queries and whatnot. I mean, it's such a big difference to when I hit those sticking points, just be able to ask them a question. They could show me how to find the answer. They show me the pitfalls to avoid when making my queries, and show me the right way to think about it, which is really the most important thing. And so with that being said, we are really excited to announce our new course, which is right here. It's actually SQL Webinar Training Series, which will be starting this coming week, actually, and it'll be running for 8 weeks. It'll be sort of in a similar format to what we've done today with this live webinar. We'll have an hour-long webinar each week where we and everyone that's in the group will go ahead and go through this curriculum that you see here. We're going to, in week 1, go over understanding the database, the basics of what is a table or a relationship and what are the different data types. And that's something we didn't really cover today. And then week 2, we're going to go over viewing data. Some of the things we did talk about a little bit briefly today with the select and the from, and then using star and aliases and whatnot. Week 3, filtering data. Week 4, aggregate data. And then we'll move on to subqueries and joins. And then in week 7 and in week 8, we're actually going to go over this 10 queries course that I talked a little bit about earlier. We're going to go through the queries and explain all of them and answer any questions that there are. And so the really great thing about this is that instead of plodding through an online course, not really making much progress or getting stuck at certain points, we'll be there throughout this entire process to answer any questions that you have. And if you have a topic that you want to talk about that we haven't really addressed, then we can go ahead and go in that direction the following week. And also we're going to have 5 to 10 query challenges that we're going to give out as homework each week so that you can reinforce the principles that we've gone over in that week's lecture. And then the following week, we can go over those queries and answer any questions that you might have about it. All right, so once again, there's lots of great ways to learn SQL. If you want to have an accelerated route through which you can build your SQL knowledge, then we're going to be starting the SQL webinar training course and series this coming Monday. And so we've just now opened this course to the public. So you guys are the first ones to know about it. And it costs $199 right here. And if you want to join, just click here on this Take the Course button, and that'll guide you through the process to go ahead and purchase the course. And we'll hope to see some of you there in this coming week so that we can move forward and through all of this content that we have here. So feel free, let us know if you have any questions. We'll stick around a little bit longer here in the webinar. And also you can feel free to email us at learn2sql@gmail.com. And we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have either about this webinar training series that we've got coming up or anything else in regards to SQL. We're definitely glad to reach out and help on that as well. So that's all we have for today. Hopefully this webinar was useful for you. We went over a lot of basics and actually using queries, solve problems, and to learn the material. And then moving forward, we'll have other emails, other blog posts, other training videos, and of course this great opportunity with this webinar training series to go through queries live with us so that we can help lead you by the hand as you learn SQL. So that's it for today, and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.